here's Brody Brazil.
I certainly realize the information I'm about to present here is not scientific. It does not represent the entire hockey community, but it's an interesting enough cross-section. It's a big enough cross-section done by the Twitter account JFreshHockey. I'm familiar with JFresh's work. JFresh went out and got 2,170 votes to ask this question: which NHL team would you root for in a head-to-head matchup? It literally is that simple. Every team against every other team. Pick a winner of who you root for in those respective matchups. And what that does in answering that question, it brings us to kind of a popularity poll. Which teams are the most popular and the least popular across the NHL? And when you look at this cross-section, there's a lot of things to break down. There's a lot of ways to digest this. First off, it's important to know, well, I should have done that in white. Let me try that again. That the least popular team, the Vegas Golden Knights, are about half as popular as the most popular team. So look at that spread, 68% to 33%. So it goes to show you this is not a tight race. These two are polar opposites when you look at the most favorite team versus the least favorite team. But I also want to break this down in a sense of the top five, the bottom five. Where do the original six teams stand? How about the Canadian teams? How about the California teams? Let's start with the top five. So what's the common ground here? What's the commonality? I mean, you've got the Avs, right? So a successful team. They've had their ups and downs. Right now, riding more of an up than a down. They have very good players. I don't know if they have like the most prominent named players in the NHL, and I do not say that with any disrespect. I'm just saying there's no Ovechkin or McDavid or Crosby or Austin Matthews on that team. That being said, they're a very potent and talented team. And so I don't know if geography plays into this. Are JFresh's followers and voters more Denver and Colorado located than anything else? I don't know. So you've got an American team. They're a very good American team. Then you've got the Buffalo Sabres, who are historic in a lot of ways and who have had success over the decades, but certainly not so much in recent times. So is it a pity thing? Is it a less dangerous thing? What's the common thread there? Because those two teams, in a lot of ways, right now, don't really have much in common. Up next, and I'll be a homer here to say I totally understand why people love the San Jose Sharks. They love the fact that they're a fun team. They've always had the cool colors, and they skate out of the shark head, and they've had great players, and they've had some down years. But that's a weird commonality, right? Between Buffalo and San Jose, two struggling teams trying to rebuild in the last couple of years. And all of a sudden, they're two of the more favorite teams that the general NHL fan base will root for. Sorry, I shouldn't have erased my top five there. Then you've got the Dallas Stars, who obviously made a very legitimate postseason run this past season. So they're a good team, but again, that's a Texas team, so a non-traditional hockey market. That's another way to look at this. Denver, kind of traditional, I suppose. Buffalo, definitely traditional. San Jose, non-traditional hockey market. Same thing with Dallas. And then you get into Vancouver. So you get your first Canadian team, the only Canadian team right here in the top five. Now, what are Leafs fans saying about that? What are Edmonton fans and Calgary fans and Ottawa fans and Montreal fans saying about that? It's interesting. The only popular team to crack the top five are the Vancouver Canucks. So that's a quick look at the top five. How about a look at the bottom five? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, I had to do my math there. We'll draw the line. Let me redraw the line here. And you have some original six teams here in the bottom five. The Blue Shirts, the Rangers, the actual Blues at 29, the Bees at 30, Chicago at 31, and oh my goodness, let's save that separate conversation. There's too much red there. You know what? What's the good contrast here? Is it green? Like, what am I doing? Like the Vegas Golden Knights, and even, I mean, look at every percentage point here, 35 to 37, 37 to 40, but they are 33. They are significantly the least popular team in terms of this vote. And let me just preface that one more time. I understand this is not 20 votes or 200 votes. It's 2,000 plus votes, but it's also not 20,000 votes or 200,000 votes or 2 million votes. So there's a certain something to be said about the size of this study and how it looks. But the Golden Knights, the least popular team. Now, was this in relation to how they played out the last season, using the LTIR with Stone and bringing him back, and how they've done that the last couple of years? Is it their early success as an expansion team that, all these other fan base franchises and they didn't get the success of 2 Stanley Cup final appearances in their first 6 years and then winning the Stanley Cup in year 6. So is it, and I hate to say jealousy, but is it envy? Is it something like that of why everybody kind of roots against the Golden Knights? What is it? Success? The way they're playing things out? Their strategy? I don't think it's a resentment against Las Vegas. I mean, if people are just looking at cities, I don't know that they have that animosity towards Las Vegas. So that's interesting to take a glance at the bottom 5. Okay, how about the original 6 teams? So let me try and highlight here. I think, the first one, Montreal. And then you've got Detroit. You've got Toronto in there. You've got the Rangers, Boston, and Chicago. So there you go. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I got them all. Yeah, there's my 6. So this is also interesting in that none of the original 6 teams, I mean, if we're talking about a 32-team league, only the Habs are in the top half in terms of original 6 and teams that fans would root for. So what does that say? Is it because the older franchises have more banners, more history, more tradition, but you'd also think they have more established fan bases and more fans that would flat out root for them just because, well, it's what their parents rooted for and their grandparents rooted for. It's interesting that, most of the original 6 teams are in this final third of your screen over here. So what does that mean? And again, I'm just asking the questions. I don't know that I have all the answers here. Okay, how about one more look at the Canadian teams? So you got Vancouver at number 1. Let me just go down the list here. Edmonton number 2. You've got the Jets at number 3. Habs at number 4. Flames at number 5. Am I missing anybody here? Ottawa at number 6. And then the Leafs at number 7. So if you're actually looking at this big picture, right, you kind of do have an interesting spread. And most of the Canadian teams, let's try purple. Most of the Canadian teams are right there in the middle. Obviously, none at the top, none here really at the bottom. So 5 through 24 is where all of the Canadian teams sit. And look, Canadian fans, this is their sport. I know lacrosse is the national sport. But the Canadian fan bases are heavily invested. You think they would vote favorably for their specific teams. They would be rabid with their votes. So it makes sense that the Canadian teams are maybe not the highest because they won't root for each other, but they're also not the lowest because they do get that support. So take away from that what you will. And then I'll make one final point here, the California teams. And of course, I'll just do this to rub it in, that the Sharks are way ahead of the Kings and Ducks. It is interesting that the Kings and Ducks are back-to-back, 19 and 20 right there together, but that the Sharks, I don't want to say somehow, some way, they are much more popular than their other California counterparts. And again, this is from people voting worldwide, I would assume mostly in North America, between Canada and the United States. So this is a picture of what fans from far and wide are, I say voting for, but also rooting for, in terms of their favorite NHL teams and head-to-head matchups. Again, we should explain that one more time. This question was, who would you root for? If the Sharks played the Ducks, who do you root for? If the Sharks played the Leafs, who do you root for? That's how they did this, every team against every other team, and that's how we arrive at all these percentages of votes. So I thought that was interesting. Jay Fresh, appreciate your work. I wanted to promote that. And you've made it here to the end of this video, which I really appreciate. Thumbs up down below. That'll greatly help me in this video, in this channel. I would like that. I would love it if you also go down there right now, hit that subscribe button, so I definitely get to see you back here next time.